The beating heart of the mine, foundry, was where the iron ore was directly smelted into vast ingots. The huge vats still bear evidence of the bodies that were incinerated within them, preserved in the metal residue. The MacMillan foundry was consigned to the scrap heap, and its horrors were forgotten as time passed and the buildings fell into ruin. And on this Surviving the Fog, we are going to look at the totem spawn in the Ironworks of Misery on the MacMillan Estate. Now, if you do want to check us out live, we do stream on Twitch throughout the week at twitch.tv/Parklis, and we are there to answer any questions you might have about Dead by Daylight or just anything in general. Now, if this is your first time watching a Surviving the Fog video, what we do is explain to you the totem spawns on every map. Now, every single map has a large pool of possible totem spawn locations. When the trial begins, the game will select 5 of these totem spawns at random and place them throughout the map. So what we aim to do here in these videos is to help you better understand where these totems could possibly spawn, so as you're going through the game and you need to figure out where that huntress lullaby is, you'll be easier to find it rather than just wandering around aimlessly on a map. So without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into this episode of Surviving the Fog, the Ironworks of Misery. Now, to make things slightly easier in this map, there are 3 general distinctions between totem spawns. There's going to be the outer area of the map, there's going to be the inner area of the map, and then the main building, the Ironworks itself. We're going to go ahead and put up timestamps for you, so if you want to jump around, this will make it a little bit easier. So let's see what we got. Now, the first totem we're going to look at is the obligatory shack totem. This one you'll see in many other maps. Basically every map that has a shack. Now, oddly enough, when I was making this video, the shack totem took a while to show up, whereas on other maps, the shack totem would spawn quite regularly. This one took about 25 or 30 different attempts before I could get it to spawn. But just like in the rest of the shacks, this totem is going to be up by the pallet next to the wall between the box and the wall. So take a look for that if you're looping shack. All right, now as we continue outside, the next totem we're going to look at is the standard jungle gym tile. Now, this tile was first introduced in MacMillan as it was the first map. So just like in all the other standard jungle gym tiles, this is going to have your pallet on one wall, a window kitty corner opposite wall. Usually it's going to have a hook, 2 lockers, sometimes a gen. Now, this totem is going to be in the corner, usually opposite the pallet, behind a box, right when you first enter in the tile. So take a look out for that if you happen to see it. Now, as we continue through the jungle gym tiles, the next one we're going to look at is the long wall, short wall, or as I have found out, some people are calling this the C jungle gym tile because part of it looks like a C. Anyway, on the long wall, short wall, one side of the pallet loop is going to be a short wall, and then the other side is going to be a long wall. In this tile, you're going to see lockers, sometimes a generator, sometimes a hook. Now, this totem is going to be in the C section of the tile towards the back. As you enter into the C, it's going to be on the right side, just like in many of the other long wall, short wall tiles throughout the game. Now, the final jungle gym we're going to look at on the outside is the L wall T wall. This is known as the L wall T wall because one of the walls with window looks like an L and the other one looks like a T. The 2 windows are usually kitty corner from each other on the tile. The tile sometimes has a generator, sometimes has a hook, and usually has a locker. Now, this totem is going to be on the T wall side towards the inside of the tile, and it's going to be between 2 boxes, much like many other maps. All right, as we're moving on down the line, the very first unique tile that we're going to see on this map is the giant log pile. This is going to be on the outer edges of the map. The giant log pile is very easy to spot. Sometimes it'll have a hook, it'll have a gen. It won't have any lockers, but this totem is going to be on the ends. It could be on either the left side or the right side, and the totem's going to be tucked under there right next to some of the logs. All right, we're continuing through the outer tiles. This is another unique tile to the MacMillan. This is the water tower tile. You notice it because it's a broken down building. There's a giant water tower type thing in there. It could be a feeder, but it's a square tile surrounded by boxes on certain corners. You usually won't see a gen here. Sometimes you will. Sometimes there's a hook. Anyway, this totem on one of the corners is going to have a set of boxes that are kind of curved around. This totem's actually going to be snuck in there. We call these the bullshit boxes. All right, finishing up with the special landmark tiles on the outer edge of the map. We have the hill tile. Now, you've seen this tile on many other maps. Now, the totem here spawns in basically the same place that you would see in many of the other maps. As soon as you go up towards the top of the hill, this tile is going to be on your immediate right in between some rocks. Now, a gen and a hook can spawn here. You'll know where the entrance is because the hook is actually facing the entrance. All right, finishing up with the monument tiles, we have the more generic junk tiles. Now, this is a pallet junk tile on the outside of the map. This one's pretty specific because you'll notice that in one of the corners of this tile, it's going to have a box that's by itself. And then pretty much right next to the box towards the side is going to be a collection of wire spools and boxes. Usually it doesn't have the pallet. Now, inside this cluster is actually going to be your totem hiding in there, so don't worry about the rest of the tile. Now, continue with theme of the junk tiles. This one is the outer junk tile. However, this one has tank tracks, most noticeable by the tank tracks. Obviously, the boxes are pretty sparse. This totem is going to be next to the tank tracks. Much like the last one, it's going to be in a cluster of boxes, kind of cloistered all by itself to hide the totem pretty nicely. So if you see the tank tracks, look to the cluster of boxes, and your totem should be waiting for you in there. As we start in the more generic tiles, this one is the rock tree tile, although it's kind of hard to call it the tree tile because there's only like 4 trees and there's about 5 different rocks. Now, this one is most noticeable by the palette that's surrounding the larger rock formation with the taller rock, and the larger rock formation has the tree sticking out of it. This one, the totem you're going to look for, is in that larger rock formation with the tree sticking out of it. Now, keep in mind, the pallet won't always spawn here. So if you see this, take a look whether it has a totem pallet or not. The next tile we're going to look at is an interesting one. This is the outer tree tile. Most noticeable that there's just only trees. It's just trees, a lot of trees. I think they're oak, I'm not quite sure. Out of the entire map, this is the most ridiculous totem spawn, as it is very obvious where this totem is. It's going to be right next to one of the trees, right at the base. Sometimes there's a gen here, sometimes there's a hook. Stay away from this if you can. It's a very terrible tile. It's super barren, but if there's a totem, try and knock it out quickly just in case. Moving on to the next set of tiles, we're still on the outside here. These are the rock tree tiles. Lots of rocks, lots of trees, sometimes a gen, sometimes a hook. Not often will you see a pallet here. This tile looks very similar to the rock pallet tile that we showed earlier. However, it has much larger cluster of rocks. They're much bolder and in your face, better for line of sights. Very seldom will you see a pallet. This totem is going to be at the base of 2 trees that are butt up right up against a rock towards the side of the tile itself. All right, moving down the line of the outer rock tree tiles, this one is much sparser. Some deforestation and some mining has been going on here at the Ironworks. So there's only a handful of rock formations. There's only a handful of trees. Again, it's right out in the middle of the tile. It's almost as bad as the barren tree tile, but at least this one's being hidden by some rocks. So in the middle of the tile, there's going to be a stack of rocks, and it can be facing either in towards the tile or out towards the map. And it's just going to be hiding back there. So take a look if you see this large rock formation. All right, as we continue around the outside, supply and demand has risen, so the deforestation and the mining has increased. In this tile, it's another outer rock tree tile. Only one rock formation, again, only a handful of trees. And this one's kind of obvious to see, and it's a pretty dead tile. You get a couple boxes, but don't let the boxes fool you. This totem is going to be hidden behind the single rock formation, usually at the corner of the tile. So it's either on the inner corner or the outer corner. All right, here we have another outer rock tree tile. This one is a little more densely populated with the rocks, about the same population as the trees. This totem is once again going to be in the middle of the tile. It's going to be in a kind of slightly curved rock formation that's going to give you a little bit of cover, but not too much, so don't rely on it. Again, it can be on either side of the tile, so keep an eye out for it. This totem's just going to be chilling there, once again on the outside of the map. Alright, now this next tile is pretty similar to the first one, except for kind of miniaturized a little bit. You still have a couple stone formation, couple rock formations with a handful of trees. You'll notice one rock formation has the 2 trees flanking it, whereas the other rock formation has a single tree. Again, this totem's pretty much in the open, pretty easy to spot if it's lit, a little harder to see if it's not. But look for the 2 trees with the single rock formation and you might just spot a totem. Alright, as we move towards the inside of the map, these are the tiles that are not up against the wall but are more towards the main building. For some reason, they decided to put one of the most useless tiles in there, and that is the inner tree tile. Pretty barren. Sometimes you'll have a gen, sometimes you'll have a hook, almost no pallets. This totem, once again, just like on the outer tile, is going to be right smack dab in the open. It's going to be at the base of the central tree. If you see a large cluster of trees, almost nothing there, you might just find a totem. Again, they put some of these outer nature tiles towards the inside near the main building. Going further inside the map, we're going to look at the next set of tiles, which are the inner path tiles. Now, this one we're looking at is the inner tree path. It's got a bunch of trees, sometimes a gen, sometimes a hook, but other than that, not a whole lot. The map does have path that usually connects the shack to the main building and the main building to other parts of the map that you'll start seeing now if you haven't noticed it before. Now this totem is in the cluster of 3 trees that surround a single rock next to a larger rock that's surrounded by 2 trees. This totem is usually going to be facing the outside of the tile. As we continue down the path, you'll notice that part of the path has a large bit of junk on it. This is the inner path junk tile. Sometimes it has a pallet, sometimes it doesn't. There can be a gen, there can be a hook. Now, this is a lot of junk. You'll notice one large cluster of junk with some standing up boxes, some sideway wire spools, a blue tarp. Now, that's the part of this junk you're going to want to look for, because towards the back of the tile in that junk is going to be a little hallway type little nook in there that's going to be surrounded by some spools and some boxes, and your totem's going to be actually hiding in there. Moving past the path and closer to the main building, we have the inner junk pallet tiles. Now this is a cluster of junk, usually has a pallet, sometimes has a gen. This totem is going to be towards the pallet. Inside there's going to be a section of junk that has an indented C type, and it's going to be facing the inside of the tile, and your totem's going to be hiding there. Usually not too hard to spot whether it's lit or not. Alright, the next tile we're going to look at is very similar to the last one, and you might be saying, Parklis, why are you showing me the same tile? Well, it's actually not. This is the same as the outer junk tile that we saw way back towards the start of the video. You'll notice that this has the single box all by itself, and directly next to it is a large collection of junk. Now, this collection of junk sometimes has a pallet next to it. However, the totem is in the same spot. It's going to be in the large cluster of junk in that little nook, but instead of on the outside of the map, it's going to be closer toward the main building, so keep an eye out. Alright, as we go into the main building totems, we're going to do this one a little differently. So if you guys liked what you saw, make sure you give a like. If you want to see more, make sure you subscribe. You guys know how YouTube works. It'll really help us out. You can leave some comments down below if we missed something, or if you just want to see what's next. Now, here's something interesting about the main building. I've noticed with these rework of maps that the maps tend to have one guaranteed totem spawn. Well, the main building seems to be that quote-unquote guaranteed totem spawn. However, I can't call it guaranteed because it's only about 98% of the time. And the reason that is the main building actually has 3 separate totem spawns, which I honestly didn't even realize until I started making this video. And I noticed that these totems would spawn almost every single time I made a trial. So the first one we're going to look at is up at the very top of the Ironworks of Misery, and you go towards the back, towards the control room. The first totem in here is going to be at the back of the control room between the box and the window that is sometimes open. So get a look up there and check it out. Now, the second totem that's in the Ironworks of Misery is again going to be upstairs. So if you're inside, take the main stairwell up. This one I'm calling the lower catwalk, because as you see at the top, there's kind of two catwalks. This one's on the lower portion where the two lockers are. If you go all the way to the back, behind this box up against the wall is going to be this sneaky little totem, so keep an eye out if you happen to be around. All right, now finishing up with the last totem in the video is once again going to be on the inside of the Ironworks, and as the last one was the lower cat, this one is the upper catwalk. So if you go all the way up the stairs towards the upper catwalk, go towards the control room, and right at the wall, right before the control room, behind a sneaky little box, is going to be this tricky little totem. Thanks everybody for watching, and remember, stay safe out there in the fog.